Hello.
Hi, this is Fam Electric Ghost. We have Forest Hills on the line.
What's up?
How you doing?
How you doing? So
Doing well.
it's our second interview, and you guys got a brand new record out.
Yep.
So you have the new record Renegade, which you have on CD. Do you have it on vinyl too?
Not yet. We currently don't do our records on vinyl, but as our band grows, we are open to starting to release vinyl. But we do have CDs for now.
That's cool. Yeah, I was reading your website and your kind of and also some of your Instagram postings, kind of telling your fans about the nature of what we had talked about at the end of our last podcast is like the way the music industry is. It's a
Hmm.
lot more advantageous for bands if the fans buy the CDs through the band's own websites, or
Right.
buy your merch, or buy your ability to support the band is more relevant than if just doing it on Spotify or Apple Music.
Absolutely.
So you guys are excited about this new. How long did it take to put this new record together?
I mean, usually we're pretty far ahead of ourselves. Like, we just released our second album and we're already recording our third. Like, we're usually at least one or two albums ahead of whatever we're currently releasing. I'd say Renegade, I mean, it released a year after Break Free did, a little bit over a year. So it probably took us maybe like 12 months to really write and record everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know the feeling. Like I'm kind of in the total creative zone. I got like 3 albums in the can.
Nice.
So I know I'm kind of a little too crazy. Kind of Prince was my mentor in terms
Nice.
of like how you should record like every day.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I'm kind of crazy that way. I got too much material, so I get the feeling. But it's cool that that you're that productive, because there's some guys, some bands are like, oh, it takes a long time to get ideas. It seems like you guys got a lot of good ideas. That you don't seem to be running out of inspiration.
Well, and since there's two of us too, that keeps like bands that have four or five, excuse me, four or five people in them. It takes more time because you have more people to go through, and it's just a lot more gears in the machine.
It's a longer process, whereas like our band being a duo and I do everything except the drums, it's a lot easier for me. Like, I just come up with a song and I kind of already creatively know where I want that to go. I think the drums honestly take the longest because it's
Yeah.
about Jack figuring out how to work
Well, I
with.
have to learn the song. Like
Yeah.
you created it, so you know it from inside out. Where I have to kind of learn it from inside out.
Yeah, no, definitely like drums is the longest process for us because those happen last and those are kind of made to fit with all the material that's already there. But no, like I've written over 1,000 songs, and so we definitely stay ahead of ourselves and just have like a lot of material. And I mean, it works, if we ever hit, a creative rut, which I don't think we ever will, but if that ever happens where there's some writer's block, we have job security because there's a lot of songs already there to just, work with.
Yeah, I get it, because I got a day gig, where I'm into programming and stuff. So having a lot of material, I can keep on pushing things out if I'm stuck on a project
Yeah.
in my day gig. But like the feel. I was listening to the album, and I know you guys don't like to like name check references, but I kind of got a feel. One of my favorite bands of all time was like Who's to Do. And I had this kind of feel like with the way you're running through things on this record, kind of reminded me of like Zen Arcade, and the kind of feel of it. It had this really cool kind of that kind of punk aesthetic that I like.
Dope.
Thank you. That's a huge compliment. So.
Especially for Jack.
Oh,
He
yeah.
loves punk music. Jack loves punk.
Anytime somebody can hear somebody else's like previous music and ours, like it's always a huge compliment. Like we never mind hearing
we're
people
not offended
relating.
by it. If someone's like, "Oh wow, you sound like this band that I really love," I always take that as a compliment because you're saying I sound like something that you like. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's why I like. That's the interesting thing today, in today's world where things are so kind of processed, and you got the bands that are like really tied to like using Ableton or using Pro Tools, and they've got all these backing tracks. It's kind of refreshing to hear something that's more got this kind of CBGB feel.
Sure.
That always kind of keys me off, because I like that. That's the reason why I like Nirvana. I think that's why people dug Nirvana after the excesses of like new wave and heavy metal. Then you had something that was more true. You know. So do you guys? I know we talked about this before, but do you feel like that type of songwriting that's what appeals to you the most? like in the way you write, they kind of feel to have that kind of freedom to not like maybe overdo production, but kind of have a more honest statement.
Yeah, I mean, I used to work as a solo pop artist. I was in the pop industry for a while. I actually had a record label offer a deal to me. So I was in that industry for a while. You know, I used to use auto-tune, we used processing, we had, you know, lots of digital stuff going on, and that was totally fine. But the kind of music that's in my heart and that I knew I wanted to make with Forest Hills was always just genuine. You know, it is what it is. We don't use any fake instruments. The vocals are never processed. It truly is who we are and how we sound as musicians. You know, if you can't get on stage and recreate your songs exactly as they are, clearly something is amiss in your creativity. But you know, it all depends on sound and genre.
Yeah, and like as far as like drums, I mean, I've been around producers that have like sometimes bands will pay the producers to complete their songs, and you know, the producer will actually record the drummer and then just rewrite the drums through like Ableton or something, and they'll sound great. Like the songs will sound great, but it doesn't feel like that drummer. And so when you go and see them live,
they don't sound the same.
It's just not the same feel. And I don't know. I like you said, honesty. You know, I want the person to be able to kind of tell that there's a human behind the instrument. And it's also not really like we're not trying to be, you know, a new metal type. Like we're not trying to be a new genre or like the newer genres. We're not going for that sound of, you know, MIDI drums. And
no, we don't try to sound a particular way. And again, it really is just depending on what kind of sound you want. Like if you're in the pop industry, I'd say auto-tune is almost a necessary tool because it helps make the vocal sound smoother. It just gives it that pop feel that like all pop songs have nowadays. So it's really contextual to what music you're making. But for Forest Hills in particular, we just that just isn't
like
for us.
Certain metal bands, like you need a certain sound of kick drum to sound more metal.
That
so
machine
you
gun,
use triggers,
drums,
like, and there's nothing wrong with triggers. They're not a cheat. It's a tool, just like an effects pedal on a guitar.
Yeah, that's what works for them. We don't use it, but that's what works for them, and that's great.
There's kind of like I'm a kind of progressive synthesist, you know, and I'm always in kind of in a debate in my own mind between should I be using my Moogs or my digital synths, and most of the time I go with the Moog. Because it's the same type of thing. Like if you're electronic musicians today, they're always saying, "Oh, I'm an electronic musician." When you look, they got a CDJ, and they're using like Ableton or Pro Tools, and they got a soft synth. And I kind of come from the era where electronic musician is kind of like Keith Emerson, or Rick Wakeman, you know, and the idea that you're using these big, you know, EMS VC3s or you know Prophet 5s, you know, Dream Machines. The classic sense that those actually have a sound that is very organic, even though they're electronic. It's different than electronic music today. And so
there's a time and a place for it.
It's like the difference between a CD and a record. You know, both are great for their different reasons, but you know, the combination of the two, like it's fun to have something on CD and then listen to the record, or you know, it's fun to have that.
Or even again between genres, like if you're doing EDM, having everything digitized makes total sense, but it's more about not getting stuck in that mindset of, oh, I'm making this, so I have to do it this way. You know, like let your options be open to you. Don't force yourself to be one way or the other. You can use both.
Yeah, I mean, because like if you're like the way because I do a lot of electronic music, I mean, I'll have like a digital synth to do strings or piano because that's what's going to work. You need a polyphonic synth that's going to do that, or a synth that can do samples. But if I want a really heavy kind of Parliament Funkadelic bass line, I'm going to use a mini mode. That's going to give me that sound. And so, you know, you use whatever tool services the song. And, you know, sometimes if you're doing something, you might use, you know, certain voice treatments. I use vocoders, but I use them to create characters.
Yeah,
exactly.
I don't use them for like auto-tune. I use them to create like a method actor. And so it's a different way of doing it, kind of like what Camille from Prince. That's my idea of you, or Sir Nose from George Clinton. That's how I think you should use vocoders.
And like I mean, I have an electronic. I have a Roland SPDSX on my drum kit pretty much all the time. So I'll use 808 drops if I want some percussive drums. I'll throw the percussive drums on there. Like even for live shows, I'll sometimes use some kind of freaky sounding pads that you kind of hear, kind of don't in the background. Like it's fun to add some layers.
It's another layer, But
so as a drummer, that's interesting that you actually do bring 808s in
Yeah.
Because 808s are such a big thing. It's 808 month this month. It's
Oh
808
yeah.
day was a couple. Rolling freaks like me, 808 day was a couple days ago, and
Yep.
we were all kind of going crazy because Roland gave us some free stuff.
Oh sweet.
For all
Congrats.
the people who have the electronic drum machines, they issued like a FM synthesis version of the 808 that
Oh
can actually
sweet.
do FM synthesis. What the cool thing about the 808, just to go and diverge, but the fact that it's not sampled, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a synthesizer creating what an interpretation of drums,
Right.
which is to me is really more creative than potentially using sample drums, because then you can kind of create things that don't exist.
No,
Yeah.
exactly. And those are my favorite type of electronics. Like I've done a lot of score work and stuff for films, and a lot of that, like I don't have the budget to hire an orchestra or to hire a bunch of musicians. So I have to use, synthesized
Yeah.
sounds and modulate stuff, stretch stuff out,
So I want to get into your new album to kind of go through it track by track. So if we
Sure.
start off with Renegade's first track, Blame, that sounds really kind of raw, and it was cool because it had this honesty to it. Can you kind of get to like where that is coming from?
Yeah, so yeah, I do everything in the band except the drums. So really what happens is I'll kind of write the song, give a rough demo of it to Jack, and he'll make his drums for it last. But anytime that I'm writing a song of any kind, I'm always writing about something that I'm feeling or something I felt or an experience I've had. I never write about stuff that I don't know. So that applies to any song, even just outside of Blame. For Blame in particular, I was going through like a rough bit of depression and just kind of felt like no matter what I was trying in life, it kind of was just making everything worse. And the only person I had to blame for it was myself. So I was kind of like in a bout of hopelessness. And I think, the piano kind of really expresses that too, because it comes in very piano based with some rap. And then the guitars are very like drown out and like sad during the chorus. It kind of gets powerful. But yeah, the whole song is really just about feeling hopeless and down on your luck when you're trying to make things better, but it just seems to be making things worse.
Well, I like that kind of, the indie kind of, singer-songwriter nature of what you're doing is kind of a big draw to me in a world where everybody has like, typical songs in this age are kind of like, it seem to be clip based,
Yeah.
And you've got a song that's like heart based,
Yeah.
and more inner soul based, that's kind of like the big draw that why I listen to, like IRS and SST as a kid, trying to get that kind of real feel.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like when I first started writing, I looked at a lot of songs because I was trying to learn how to write, and I noticed like so many songs, the vast majority are about like love or partying of some sort, and that's just not the kind of stuff that I want to write about. I don't write love songs. I don't do that. I don't write songs about going out to the club and partying. It's totally fine if other people do that, but I just felt like that's such an oversaturated topic
Yeah.
to write about, whereas I could be letting people know that they're not alone when they're dealing with something really difficult,
Yeah, that was kind of big draw, like Lou Reed and the Velvets. That when I was a kid, I said, well, like look at this band. This band is really getting into like New York counterculture and all these kind of dark tones and all this stuff that you would never talk about.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was super drawn to that because I was already a Dylan fan and I loved his wordplay. But then I got into Lou Reed and it's kind of minimalistic, kind of Warhol, based scene. And I was like, wow, that's what I like. So
Yeah.
I was always looking for bands that were going that, like Sonic Youth, kind of still go bands that would go that way, that with that kind of intention, which is not pop sensibility at all. But
Yeah, sure.
But Lynn Lou sometimes would have a song like "Walk on the Wild Side." He's like, "Oh yeah, he could," and then he'd still have his framework, which was not the typical pop song. But it
Yeah.
would, it shows like if you don't necessarily have to use a pop formula, that if you're true to what you want to do as an artist, you can break through.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
an totally unexpected way.
Yeah.
So what would be like if on this album? Like, what's your favorite song on the record? If you
I
were
mean,
going to point to a song and say what in this project, what was this song that really kind of like clinched it for you, like the song that you would want people to kind of look at as maybe
For me personally, like I'm equally proud of all of the songs that we did. As far as like the fans go, everyone seems to be liking Blame and Riot a lot. My like I'd say personal favorite just because of the meaning for me is Name Calling. I definitely don't think it would be like the most popular song off the album. Like it's not a bad song. I just don't think it would be like the song that everyone's like, oh yeah, Renegade, Name Calling, you gotta listen to it. But just that song is about like me being transgender and getting bullied, and just it has some very deep rooted past issues for me personally. And then kind of like the end of the song is about refuting it, saying like, no, I'm not a freak, I'm not what you're calling me. It's kind of like about standing up for yourself. So that song has like a lot of more like deep rooted personal connection for me specifically. But what about you, Jack?
I mean, I really like Name Calling just because it is personal and it is powerful. Hello is a very delicate song, and so it was actually really fun to write drums for because I only wrote it to piano because the song only has piano, vocals, and drums. So it was actually really fun to write drums to something that was just piano. I don't know, there was a lot of really kind of more delicate parts in the album, and then there's a lot of very aggressive parts. So I liked the contrast of it. Like I liked being able to start out with very minimalistic things like on Blame and like Hello, and a lot of songs where it'll be just like rim clicks and it'll just be very subtle, less is more. And then it gets into parts where I get to go a little nuts and make it sound a little more raw and that more punk rock side of me.
Yeah.
So it's really fun being able to be like a classical jazz musician, but then also still like, rock out.
I feel like Break Free, like it kind of had songs that were in like a middle ground. Like there was a lot of variety, but I think Renee kind of explored the extreme areas of certain varieties that we had. Like all the elements are still there, but we explored more areas of them.
I like Let Go a lot because I'm kind of in my kind of punk mode where I was.
Yeah, that one starts out pretty going.
You got the guitar solo. That was fun to me.
Yeah, I just like this kind of reminded me of Who's to Do a lot. I always kind of get into that Zen arcade feeling, but yeah, I just like the drive of that. But yeah, for this album, because of Corona, do you have like an alternative method of like performing? Since you can't do shows, are you gonna do more like online stuff? Or I think I've seen that you guys got I think you have something on your website where I think you have a thing people can join, and then you do like live concerts or something. Is that what you're doing?
So we've been doing live stream concerts every single month. We have a Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/ForestHills, it's basically a tier-based system. All the tiers have the same benefit. It's really about however much someone wants to help support our band. But we have tiers starting at $1 a month. We have $5 a month, $10 a month, and $30 a month. Whichever one you choose, it's totally up to you. But the benefit is that every single month you get to come to a free private live stream concert that we do. We usually do it on YouTube?
Yep, YouTube.
We host a private show link, and everyone gets the link via email, and they can come watch the concert. There's a chat room. We all get to talk. We do Q&A, and we usually put like 8 to 10 songs. And yeah, if the person has to miss it that day, that's totally fine because we just upload the video afterwards via a private share link, and they can watch it later on, which is really cool too.
So where do you guys do that from? Where do you perform that? Like in your studio?
Yeah, we have our music studio.
So you've got it set up now with like web cameras and streaming capability?
Yeah, we were actually planning to start doing live stream concerts like before the virus even happened. We were starting to get gear for it, and then Corona hit, and it kind of just gave us even more of a platform to do something we were already planning to do. But yeah, we do use a camera. We use like all of our nice audio equipment, our boards and stuff. So it's a nice hookup. We're making it better and better as time goes on.
We even had this last one. We actually had I have a sound guy that's an amazing good friend of mine out in Oklahoma now. I knew him from Vegas, and he actually called us afterwards. It was like, dude, I ran it through my car. I ran it through my headphones. I ran it through my stereo system, and I loved it.
Yeah.
So like, it's been really cool. Like, getting it down better and better every time.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely didn't want to be like one of those bands. Like a lot of bands go live, and that's amazing, but a lot of them just kind of prop their phone up and use the like speaker that's on their phone, and it sounds terrible because like you can't hear anything. Whereas we have like professional quality camera and audio happening.
Yeah, I've been using like Roland mixers that allow me to connect my stuff to my bedroom studio. So
Yeah.
I've been able to get a pretty good thing by coming right off my mixer board, right into my camera. And the only thing
Okay.
I'm moving into is yeah, they're making all this new like streaming equipment, and some of the cool stuff is they have some like video mixers that automatically detect like, or can, like, if you have multiple camera angles, it'll kind of
Mhm.
rotate automatically through the camera angles.
Yeah,
So,
those are really cool.
Oh, that's
so if
dope.
you're so if you're doing a show, you can have like a camera pointed down on your keyboard or pointed at your guitar, pointed at your face, pointed at everything, and they will start to rotate around. And some of them can actually based on, whatever volume's coming from one thing, or emphasis, and you can control it to certain degrees. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff
Yeah.
that will allow people to do more professional looking, and stuff that people would probably be willing to pay for, because
Yep.
it will look closer to like, oh wow, it actually looks like something I would watch on MTV. you know,
No,
um,
modern technology has come a long way within like the
yeah,
last, I'd say, 5 years even.
Yeah, I
yeah,
feel like we've
stuff
been
that would
having to
cost
learn
you
how to
like,
broadcast.
yeah, stuff that could cost like $10,000, you can get, it's like, it's not that, that kind of price anymore. You can get
Yeah.
really good cameras, really good sound equipment, and yeah, and there's all kinds of places that allow you to host it, and do like Twitch and Facebook and YouTube. I've been pretty good about letting musicians do that. So you're using like YouTube is what you're using?
Yeah,
I mean,
well, YouTube and
we've done a
Instagram.
combination. We've gone live on Instagram, we've gone live
Yeah.
on Facebook, but for the private shows, we do it via YouTube.
Yeah, I've been using Twitch lately because they have a pretty good wide angle.
Mm.
That I found that, like, if you want to do a big landscape view, that they have a pretty good capability that captures a really good signal, and then allows you to do it in a kind of widescreen format, like, so you can get like the full picture of all your gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The portrait mode is cool, but like I'm trying to get more wide screens, and some of the apps don't
Yeah.
let you do as much widescreen.
A little
But
more
yeah,
cinematic.
That's an issue with Instagram. You have to do it in portrait mode, otherwise people just like have to
yeah,
turn the phone.
yeah. That's so if you've got a lot of, I got a lot of boards, I got a lot of stuff. I want to go from one board to the next, and I gotta get out of the picture.
Yeah.
But yeah. So this whole, you said you've got other projects on the way, but so how long would you like wait to put out the next project compared, to focus on that, since you've got a lot of stuff in the can? How much time do you usually give between projects to
Uh,
like give them life to like kind of be out there? Now,
yeah, I
as
mean,
independent bands have to manage themselves, they have to kind of figure out like, when am I going to put my next thing out?
for our band, like our first album came out in May of 2019. And so we've progressively been releasing one album per year. We usually start advertising the release date for the album like 6 months prior to its release. We like to let people know like way ahead of time. But yeah, like at the current rate that we're growing and like creating, I would say once a year we should be dropping something.
Yeah, so do you feel like once a year is the good kind of thing? You wouldn't want to go like two releases in the same year.
No, I don't think we do more than once a
I mean,
year.
we do like music videos and lyric videos, and like
Yeah,
we
we try
stay
to
active.
space stuff out. Like we'll do like we dropped Renegade and now we're starting to like release lyric videos and music videos for songs off of Renegade. So we keep releasing more content, but in terms of like releasing new music in and of itself, probably not more than once a year. We don't want to set the precedent for fans to be expecting 5 releases a year and then they get 5 releases one year, but then they get nothing the next because we're busy recording and writing because we went too fast, you know?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it's been, this album is really, I like it a lot. I've been listening to it all day. Um, like I said, I like Endless a lot, and I like Let Go, but that's like what I've been kind of driving into myself.
Right.
But maybe can you tell a story about maybe one of the songs on the record that was maybe the easiest song to record, or maybe then the hardest one?
I mean, probably the easiest for me was going to be Step Back, right? Step Back was pretty easy.
Yeah, because it was.
Well, Step Back is a song that I actually wrote a long time ago, like way before I met Jack, way before, like, this was before I even really did pop music stuff. I had a demo album that I recorded, and Step Back was one of the songs on it. I must have been like 15 years old or something. And when I first met Jack, I showed him like some of these demo songs that I had, and he really liked them. So actually, like on our first album, Rain was also one of those songs. So occasionally we'll revitalize an old song of mine and do it, but like the pieces are already there. Like the vocals are there, the lyrics, the guitars and all that. It's really just about re-recording it and putting drums to it.
Yeah, the hardest part for Step Back was that when I first heard it, I heard exactly what I wanted to put into it. And so I had a very high expectation of exactly what I wanted it to sound like and feel like. And it
Yeah.
took me a lot of like doing the same thing over and over again until it
Like,
just,
no, it
because
has
it
to be
has this,
perfect.
well, it has this sloshy big backbeat in it.
Yeah.
And if you push it or pull it, that backbeat too much, it just messes the whole thing up.
Yeah.
So
It's a delicate chemistry, but yeah, definitely that song was probably the easiest to record. In terms of the hardest, I mean, I know for you probably overcompensating, right? Because of the trick at the
well,
end.
that's just a little. I'd say Higher and Endless because they're two songs that go together, and there's a lot of like tempo
Oh,
changes. That one
yeah,
has a lot
yeah.
of.
Higher and Endless are technically dual tracks. They're supposed to be listened to back to back. They're actually attached to each other, which is why, like, if you only listen to Higher, it sounds like it abruptly ends, and Endless sounds like it abruptly starts because they're really just meant to be listened to like continuously. Um,
Oh, okay. Yeah,
yeah,
I
so
get it.
probably for you, yeah, with all the tempo changes.
Yeah, it was just a lot of just like preparing yourself like a bar ahead of time for a change while still trying to make it sound natural. So
Yeah,
I don't necessarily like edit things together. I try to do single takes.
yeah.
So it
Well,
was
yeah, that's
definitely
how
a
I gotta do it.
challenge.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, like, again, I write the music, so I'm not gonna write something that's past my skill level as a musician, or I'm not gonna try to sing something that's out of my range. So all the songs are more or less the same for me in terms of difficulty. I would say probably recording Riot had some challenges because I did write it in 2019. I do have some nerve damage in my arm, and that affects my ability to play guitar, and it's kind of gotten worse with time. So like recording that guitar for the final version, I did end up actually changing it a little bit because I just simply could not do the same strumming that I had wrote it with. But I think it ended up sounding better
Yeah,
after I did that. It kind of had like a nice metal chugging to it in the end. So, I mean, yeah, no, there really were no songs. We did actually have a song that we scrapped.
yeah.
It was called Changing Me. We initially planned to have 13 songs on Renegade, just like we did with Break Free, but there was a song called Changing Me, which is actually also another demo song that I wrote a long time ago, and it just something weird with like the timing was just not working in terms of Jack's
Yeah, we
drums.
were kind of on a self deadline, so
Yeah, we it was like we were nearing the end of production for all the other songs, and we were like, okay, we can either rush this song and try to get it on the album, or we can just scrap it so that like the production doesn't suffer for this one song because we're rushing to get it out there.
So it's interesting when you go back in your catalog and you pull a song out and you kind of reimagine it or re-record it. Um, when you do that, like how do you feel about like is it something about that song that made you feel like you wanted to go back to it again, where you felt like you're going to change it to fit where you are now, or where you felt like you wanted to kind of give it a different chance, or what's your motivation to go back into your back catalog and do that?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I'm still capable of playing the song the way I wrote it, I don't end up changing anything at all. It's really just the drums that end up changing because it's Jack's drums instead of just, my like little drum tunes that I was able to do back then. It's really just, if I bothered to release a song, it means that I liked it or at least felt connected to it at one point in time. And it just kind of sitting there as a demo, like it deserves to see the light of day. If it was worth recording at all, it's worth
Mhm.
being a Forest Hills song.
So you don't change the lyrics in these older songs. You just add the drums. You don't change any other significant parts of them.
No, for Step Back, I did add an extra section, but all of the other lyrics and all that were the same.
That's interesting. Yeah, I find myself sometimes I go back into my tapes because I had watched this documentary on Frank Zappa, and
Yeah,
Frank Zappa was famous for recording all his concerts, and then he would go back to his house, and on his reel to reel, he'd go and say, "Well, oh, this bit from this concert goes good with this," and he'd actually find like his songs by
yeah,
going over his live recordings and then figuring out like brand new material by reviewing his live stuff. So I find sometimes I like to go on Facebook Live, do a live kind of ad hoc stream of consciousness performance, record it and then go back and pull like the good grooves out of it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can do that when I'm like in the early stages of writing a new song, but when a song is already written, I mean, my songs are like journals for me. So that would essentially feel like going into a diary saying, "Oh, I don't like this diary I made 3 years ago. I'm going to erase it and change what I wrote." And it's like, well, you're kind of just changing the story at that point. So I just leave it alone and let it be what it is.
Mm-hmm. And you just find a way to maybe just add more color to it with the drums or change like
Didn't Terry Bozzio play with Frank Zappa? If I'm getting that
yeah
right.
yeah
Yeah, I love
yeah
Terry
yeah
Bozzio.
yeah missing persons.
Yes.
Great new wave band. Well, I'm a big new wave person, yeah. So that's cool. You know her. That as many people today would know her.
Yeah, Terry Bozzio is awesome. His daughter even plays drums now, actually. Like he's
Yeah,
great.
it's in the family, it's in the blood.
Yeah. Well, Zappa was like a big influence. It's kind of like Parliament Funkadelic in the Mothers are kind
Yeah.
of like where I like to go with my music because that's a good roadmap. Can they go everywhere?
Yeah.
That's
So you like that's the whole idea. Like expansive sound is like kind of a nod to that kind of ability to kind of take any genre and just do whatever you want to do. And I think that sometimes you don't hear that today as much.
Sure.
I'm always looking at, well, who's going to be the next Frank Zappa or in that kind of vein? And you're like, I don't really see anybody doing that.
Well, that's
But
what actually drew me to Zero's music a lot because the style of music that he writes, I don't necessarily listen to because a lot of times the drumming specifically is very slow and it's just heavy drumming. There's nothing more
Yeah.
than just heaviness to it. I'm like, well, but what if you varied that and added some lightness or added some energy to it rather than it just being dark and heavy?
Our relationship as musicians is actually very interesting because like Jack, like you said, he wouldn't really listen to the type of music that I write. And at the same time, when I met him, I did not like his drumming at all. Like he showed me different clips of his drumming and I was like, this sucks. Like I don't like this at all. But I saw his skill as a drummer and I'm like, okay, if you want to create something that is genuinely new, you can't just take a rock guitarist, a rock drummer, a rock bassist, a rock singer. It's gonna sound generic. You have to have varying styles and tastes in there. So it was really interesting to kind of come together and we had like immediate chemistry. I think we didn't really have to
We were determined.
yeah,
We weren't I
we
was
just went.
determined to write music, Zero was determined to write music, and when two people are determined to do something,
It worked. We made it
it's
work.
like chemicals, like you're gonna figure out what chemicals mix even if you get a few wrong here and there.
My
So
chemical romance.
well, I think that's the great thing when you create a new project with another musician, is the whole point is to kind of take that musical chemistry and figure out what that generates.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think today in a world where you have so many producers doing cookie cutter of like everybody's doing the same cookie cutter thing,
Yeah.
that is it's really kind of like mind numbing or sound ear numbing, because then you're like, oh, I'm trying to hear something more interesting, and that's why I get drawn into underground music and stuff that's out on the web. The bands that are not in the forefront of the business today, but that's where to me everything's going on. That's like the whole tradition of listening to somebody like a Lou Reed or
Yeah,
listen to
sure.
Alex Chilton and Big Star, a band that never made it. That kind of story always appealed to me as like, okay, like Paul Westerberg's Replacements. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of feel that I'm always looking for because it's got that authenticity. And once in a while, it hits with the public, and you get everybody seeing that Kurt Cobain was a genius, and you're like, wow, that was just like everything aligned. That he could have just been on SST forever, on SST type of label forever, like a
Yeah.
sub pop. He could have been there forever.
Sure.
And, but people zoned in on it and like, wow, that's something real, and that's where you guys have that kind of real feel,
We try.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like artificial, clip, clone, sampled, produced stuff.
Yeah.
Not that,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's some people that's what they want, but it's not me.
No, I mean it's what sound you're looking for. It's just I never felt, and that's why I kind of got out of the pop industry. I just never felt satisfied as an artist. It is very cookie cutter, and every producer that works in the pop industry is just looking for a quick way to make a hit. It's all about hits. They want singles. They just want fast money. They just want to get big quick. And like at that point, you lose the artistry. Like even if you are genuinely writing and trying to be as genuine as possible, it is very fake to an extent.
Yeah, because I was even watching like documentaries about Motown, and
Mm-hmm.
and there was this whole thing where they were thinking of dropping Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
They were gonna drop him because he wasn't making his quota. He wasn't hitting as big as Marvin, wasn't as big as the Four Tops and the Temptations. But there was a songwriter, a female songwriter, who had come out of Berkeley, and she said, "Stevie's got it. He's a great songwriter. He's like, you can't just drop him." So
Right.
she actually stood up for him and said, "I think he's gonna be brilliant." And so the Barry Gordy said, "Okay, we won't drop him," but they were gonna drop him.
Yeah.
So that tells you how much, like, sometimes the industry.
No, and that's labels. I mean, a label is a business. They care about the artist to an extent, but it's also about money. If your business is not making money, they're gonna get rid of whatever's not pulling it in. And so if they just saw an artist, like it's good that he got very lucky that someone stood up for him, because otherwise they were just gonna look at him as a dollar sign.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I like today about like this whole indie movement, where bands like yourself, you can build your website, you can sell your album yourself, that you're able to get out there, and you're not dependent on some label saying, well, if your third album isn't a hit, you got to pay us back all the money and you're done.
Right. Yeah. No, it's definitely like, and labels nowadays, I mean, there are pros and cons to signing with a label, and it's really like a band or an artist's personal decision. But if a label says, hey, we want to give you $1 million, it's because they know you're going to make three. So it's really a business investment of, okay, they've offered me something and I know I'm worth, twice or three times or five times that much. Do I want to just sign with them and just get rich quick, but probably make less in the end? Or am I going to spend the time and really build something for myself that's going to be everlasting?
Yeah, it seems to be a sad story in the industry. Like you'll have your zenith point as a big artist, right? You'll sell 10 million records, and then suddenly the record company acts like you could do that again.
Yeah.
And there's like no way you're ever going to do that again. And so then you end up for the rest of your career being in this kind of losing situation where they've got this expectation that you're going to do another Hotel California, or you're going to do another Rumors, and there's no way you're going to do that. And so
you're like a machine.
Yeah, so you're on the machine, and you're going to get, like, at the end of the day, you're going to not do well because they've set up the expectation that's not realistic.
Well, and those expectations kill creativity anyways. Like, even if you got close, like a lot of times just having that over your head makes it worse.
No, yeah, it's not a fire under your behind. It's a giant concrete slab that's crushing you down. I mean, there are even bands and artists that go broke from being signed. I think Maroon 5 was one of them. They got into debt from being with the label. Like, they actually owed their label money just for being signed to them. Like, just crazy.
Yeah, it's just crazy when you get that fire that makes you create a Rumors, or you create, that great album. And then after that, it's like you're always just trying to you're trying to outdo yourself.
Right.
And the thing is, fans will never, they're fickle. They go from one thing to the next, or they want you to do the same thing over and over, in some type pop genres. And it's like, it's a losing battle. You've got to kind of just do what you feel is right and
everyone has to make that call between, I'm either going to do this thing that's definitely going to sell, or I'm going to do this thing that I actually want to do, and it's definitely not going to be as successful, but hopefully, people will like it. And that's the thing with fans, is people don't like change. People usually don't like discovering new things because new can be scary, or they just, they like being comfortable.
I mean, that's why I like bands like, AFI and My Chemical Romance and stuff. Like, they've gone drastic directions. Like, AFI was a hard punk band, and then they went super like creative when December Underground came out, and it was very eccentric and very theatrical, and it was nothing like their other music. And then they kind of dabbled back and forth between the two. Like, they did what they wanted, and they've gained fans from both eras.
Whereas like My Chemical Romance started out very, very heavy rock, almost like metal even, and then at the end, by Danger Days, they were like pop punk
party
Japanese party.
And I'm a Prince head, right? So I used to be in Minneapolis. I used to go to Paisley Park, and actually Prince would go and play at like 3:00 in the morning.
Oh wow!
And like let people in, and the thing that was weird, he had these diehard Prince fans, that all they want to hear is 1999 and Purple Rain.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And then
Are those really fans?
yeah, I was the kind of Prince fan that wanted to hear the deeper stuff.
Yeah.
That wanted to hear his jazz explorations. That wanted to hear his power trio stuff. That wanted to hear his more funk based stuff. So like when I go and he had the power trio up there, and then you get this guy like be like, oh, how come he's not doing Purple Rain? What's like if he's doing like Hendrixian stuff? You know,
Yeah.
he's doing all this funk like maggot brain type stuff. And that's and then I'd be like, that's I knew he could do that, and then that's why I always loved him, because I knew he was like in that kind of zone. And then you'd see these other people like, oh, they wanted him to be just doing 1999.
Well, it's because there's fans of songs and then there's fans of artists. Like you're a fan of Prince as an artist and as a person. Other people that just want to hear Purple Rain, they're just fans of that song. Like they don't necessarily, they're not a fan of him. They're a fan of his songs.
That's kind of, we have fans like that where they'll hop in, a live that we do, and they're like, play introvert, play introvert, play introvert, and it's like the only song, like they consistently only request that song, and it's like, I'm glad that you like that song so much, but like we have 2 full albums out. Is there not a single other song of ours that you enjoy? Like it's fine if not, but you're not really a Forest Hills fan at that point. You just happen to like introvert,
Well, I think today with the kind of Spotify playlist audience, you tend to get people who are music fans, and they I think they do confuse it. They think they're a fan of a band and they're really a fan of a song, like you said.
A single song,
and they haven't even listened to a lot of artists that they like or say they like. They haven't listened to their full projects. They listen here and there.
It doesn't help that the industry is so single-minded.
Bands don't help with that because they just come out with singles.
Yeah, a lot of artists will just put a song out, and so a fan listens and they're like, oh, cool, this is the song that they have out so far. I really like it, so they think they're a fan. Or they're like, oh, this person only has 3 songs out. They have an EP with 4 songs out. So they don't think, oh, I like this song by this artist. I wonder if they have an album or so out. So they never bother to go check them out because the industry has become so like short attention span now.
Yeah, well, they just want to see if you can make a single and make it big, and if you don't with that one single, then you're done.
Make a hit, make money, make the money, bring it in. This is business. You're gonna make the money. You're gonna make the hit. It's not about the artistry anymore. It's all branding and business.
Yeah, it seems like the 50s. Like I think I always tell my everybody I interview, like in the 50s, you go back to like Motown or Decca, or some Volt, and all these old record labels. Everything was single oriented back then. So it seems like we've kind of gone backwards after, Sgt. Pepper started the album. Then you get Pink Floyd, you get Yes, you get all these bands doing these album oriented stuff. You got the singer songwriters, and then you would go listen to the whole Carole King album. You'd listen to, all these like great singer songwriters doing these really important ideas that you can't just listen to it as one song.
The Grateful Dead, epic stories.
I mean, music comes and goes in phases, though. I mean, like even if you look at any genre in general, like rock has always been king, but rock has faded in and out of style. Right now, it's kind of out of style in the mainstream, but it's starting to come back, I think. So you see that, like whether it's a single mindset, full albums, release types, or just music style in general, history repeats itself.
Yeah, I've been interviewing a lot of rock bands. I interviewed a rock band that was like a new wave band from Sweden. That had actually been around during the new wave movement, right? And then they kind of disappeared. One of their guys became a big producer, and then suddenly they realized like new wave is kind of having a resurgence, like all over the world, because like synthesizer companies like Prophet and Moog, they were out of business during the heavy metal era. And now they came back, and so once they came back, all these great synthesizers exist again. And so people have been actually creating that kind of music again because you can create it. And so now it's actually starting to creep back into, the whole industry. And now you're getting people who are doing that kind of album oriented, vibe oriented stuff that's not just one song. You have to kind of feel the whole record.
Absolutely.
So I'm very encouraged by that because I keep on, talking to a lot of bands. And a lot of them are coming from, Europe and Belgium and, Sweden, Norway, Netherlands, Australia. But there is a scene that seems to be coming back. And I'm very encouraged. And I like the scene that you guys are in, that kind of, New York vibe, the CBGB kind of feel of bands being like, what the Talking Heads used to do. And just that kind of feel, like the Blondie kind of feel that, when they were originally kind of punk new wave sound. It just feels authentic. It feels like something that you want to, dive into, not just one song at a time, but like the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like when I listen to Renegades all the way through and listen to it like I'm listening to it like an album is like reading a novel. It's like a sonic painting, and to me, it's like some of the fans today seem to have lost that interpretation. But some fans are starting to understand that that's what it is, and they're coming back. And I think people have time now. That I've read some statistic that people are listening to more new bands during coronavirus than any other time.
So people are looking for entertainment. They're bored.
Yeah,
they've already listened to their albums 20 times. They want something new.
They're finally willing to try something new.
Yeah, so I think we've got a chance as indie musicians to really kind of, tap into that.
For sure.
So it's cool that you guys are out there. You've got your Patreon. You're doing the live stuff. You've got a new project out. Physically, people should go out, check out your website, pick up your merch. Like we've always say to all the artists, people who listen to when we're talking to artists, if you really want to support an artist, don't just stream their work, buy their albums, buy their merch, support them on their Patreons. So we feel that, that you guys are deserving of that kind of support. So everybody who listens to this episode, please go out and do it for Forest Hills, please.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for being on the program again, and we're gonna put this out like we always do, and we'll be pushing it on our social media, and you guys want to come back anytime you have a project, let us know.
Thank you so much for having us.
You're awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.